The late afternoon sun cast golden rays through the tall windows of Reba McEntire's home studio in Nashville, illuminating the dust particles that danced in the air like tiny fireflies. November had brought a crisp chill to Tennessee, and the trees outside displayed their final autumn colors: burnt oranges, deep reds, and fading yellows, before winter's inevitable arrival. Reba sat at her vintage upright piano, her fingers absently tracing the ivory keys without pressing them down, lost in thought. At 70 years old, Reba had achieved what most artists only dreamed of: 5 decades in the music industry, countless awards adorning her shelves, a successful acting career that included her current NBC sitcom, Happy's Place, and her role as a beloved coach on The Voice. Yet, despite all these accolades, it was the simple gold band on her left ring finger that brought her the most profound joy. She had married Rex Linn 2 years ago in an intimate ceremony at their ranch, and their love had blossomed into something she never thought possible after her previous 2 marriages ended in heartbreak. "Reba, honey, we need to go over the set list for the Grand Ole Opry show next week," Jennifer Hayes called from the doorway. Jennifer, a petite woman in her late 40s with shoulder-length brown hair and warm hazel eyes, had been Reba's assistant and closest friend for nearly 15 years. She carried a leather-bound planner and wore her signature style: jeans, boots, and a comfortable flannel shirt that epitomized Nashville casual. Reba turned from the piano, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Come on in, Jen. I've been thinking about that all morning." Jennifer settled into the worn leather armchair that had witnessed countless creative sessions over the years. She noticed immediately that something was weighing on her friend's mind. "What's going on? You've got that look." "What look?" Reba asked, though she knew exactly what Jennifer meant. "The look that says you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Talk to me." Reba sighed, running her hand through her signature red hair, which she'd let grow longer this year. "It's Rex. Something's been off with him for the past week, maybe longer. He's been distant, quiet. He says he's fine, but I know him better than that. Last night, I woke up at 3 in the morning and found him sitting on the back porch in the freezing cold, just staring out at nothing." Jennifer leaned forward, concern etching lines across her forehead. "Did you ask him what was wrong?" "Of course I did. He just said he couldn't sleep and didn't want to wake me. But Jen, I saw his face. There was such sadness there, such pain. It reminded me of—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Reminded you of what?" "Of how I felt after the plane crash. That hollow, haunted look when you're trying to hold yourself together, but you're breaking inside." Reba was referring to the tragic 1991 accident that claimed the lives of 8 of her band members. A wound that had never fully healed, even after 34 years. Jennifer set down her planner, all business forgotten. "Have you considered that maybe he's dealing with something from his past? Something he hasn't shared with you? That's just it. Rex and I have been together for 5 years now. Married for 2. I thought I knew everything about him. We've talked about our pasts, our pain, our fears, but this feels different. It's like he's shutting me out, and I don't know how to reach him." The sound of a truck pulling into the driveway interrupted their conversation. Both women glanced toward the window to see Rex's black Ford F-150 parking near the main house. Rex Linn, at 71, was a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and a commanding presence that had served him well in his acting career. He'd appeared in countless television shows and films, but he always said his greatest role was being Reba's husband. "We'll figure this out," Jennifer assured her, squeezing Reba's hand. "But right now, let's focus on this Grand Ole Opry show. It's going to be special. Your 50th anniversary celebration in country music. The whole industry will be watching." Reba nodded, though her mind was still on Rex. "You're right. Robert Caldwell is coming by tomorrow to finalize the arrangements. I want everything to be perfect." As if on cue, the studio door opened and Rex entered, his tall frame filling the doorway. He wore his usual outfit of jeans, a button-down shirt, and cowboy boots that had seen better days. His face broke into a smile when he saw Reba, but she could see the effort it took. "Hey there, beautiful. Jen." He nodded at Jennifer with his characteristic Texas charm. "Hey, Rex. I was just leaving. Got some calls to make." Jennifer gathered her things and gave Reba a meaningful look before heading out. Rex walked over to where Reba sat and kissed the top of her head. "What were y'all talking about?" "The Grand Ole Opry show next week. It's going to be a big night." Reba stood and wrapped her arms around his waist, looking up at him. "How was your day?" Same old, same old. Had a call with my agent about a possible role in a new series, but I'm not sure I want to commit to something that demanding right now." His arms encircled her, but there was a tension in his body that Reba couldn't ignore. "Rex, honey, talk to me. What's going on with you?" He pulled back slightly, his blue eyes avoiding hers. "Nothing's going on. I'm just tired, that's all." "Don't do that. Don't shut me out. I know something's wrong. I can feel it." Rex's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Reba thought he might finally open up. Instead, he simply said, "I promise. I'm okay. Just got a lot on my mind with work and everything. Don't worry about me." But Reba did worry. She worried because in 5 years together, she'd learned to read Rex like one of her song lyrics. She worried because she knew that when people said they were fine, they rarely were. And she worried because she loved this man more than she'd ever loved anyone. And the thought of him suffering in silence was unbearable. That evening, as they prepared dinner together in their spacious kitchen, with its exposed wooden beams and modern appliances, Reba watched Rex carefully. He went through the motions, chopping vegetables, seasoning the chicken, pouring wine, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. The easy conversation and laughter that usually filled their home was replaced by a heavy silence that pressed down on both of them. "Rex, I was thinking," Reba began as they sat down to eat at their farmhouse table. "Maybe we could take a trip after the Grand Ole Opry show. Just the two of us. Go somewhere quiet, away from everything." Rex looked up from his plate, surprise flickering across his face. "That sounds nice, but you've got The Voice tapings coming up. And then there's the premiere party for Happy's Place. I don't want to mess up your schedule. My schedule can wait. You're more important." Something shifted in Rex's expression, a crack in the armor he'd been wearing. His eyes glistened with unshed tears, and he reached across the table to take her hand. "I don't deserve you. You know that?" "Hey, none of that. We deserve each other. That's why we work." She squeezed his hand. "But I need you to let me in. Whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it alone." Rex nodded, though he didn't speak. They finished dinner in a more comfortable silence. But Reba knew that whatever was haunting her husband ran deeper than she'd initially thought. As they cleaned up together, washing dishes side by side like they'd done hundreds of times before, she made a decision. She would find out what was troubling Rex, and she would find a way to help him heal. That was what love meant, showing up even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Later that night, as they lay in bed with the moonlight streaming through the curtains, Rex held Reba close. His breathing eventually steadied into the rhythm of sleep, but Reba remained awake, staring at the ceiling and formulating a plan. The Grand Ole Opry show was 7 days away. 7 days to uncover the truth, and 7 days to create something that might help the man she loved find peace. She thought about all the songs she'd sung over her 50-year career, songs about love and loss, heartbreak, and healing. Music had always been her therapy, her way of processing the world and all its complexities. Maybe, just maybe, music could be the bridge that allowed Rex to finally share his burden. And if there was one place where the power of music could truly shine, it was on the hallowed stage of the Grand Ole Opry, where country music legends had poured their hearts out for nearly a century. As Reba finally drifted off to sleep, her mind was already composing melodies and lyrics, weaving together a tribute that would come from the deepest part of her soul. She didn't yet know the full story of Rex's pain, but she knew that love, vulnerability, and music had the power to heal even the deepest wounds. The question was whether 7 days would be enough time to bring all those elements together. The morning sun was barely peeking over the horizon when Reba found herself in her home office. Laptop open, coffee growing cold beside her. She'd woken at 5:30, unable to sleep, her mind racing with questions about Rex. He was still asleep upstairs, and she'd slipped out quietly, not wanting to disturb him. She stared at the cursor blinking on the screen, having typed Rex Lynn Father into the search bar, but not yet hitting enter. It felt like a betrayal, researching her husband's life behind his back. But she was running out of options. Rex had always been private about certain aspects of his past, and she'd respected that. But now, watching him suffer in silence, she wondered if she'd been too respectful, too willing to let sleeping dogs lie. Taking a deep breath, she pressed enter. The results populated quickly. Movie credits, television appearances, interviews about his career. She scrolled further, looking for anything personal. Finally, she found an old interview from 1999, published in a small Texas newspaper. The headline read, "Local actor remembers fallen father on Veterans Day." Reba's heart began to race as she read the article. Rex's father, William Lynn, had been a decorated Vietnam War veteran who struggled with PTSD after returning home. He died in November 2000, exactly 25 years ago this month. The article described how Rex had watched his father battle demons no one could see, how the strong, proud man had slowly deteriorated under the weight of memories and trauma. William had passed away from a heart attack at age 62, but Rex had always believed that the war had killed his father long before his heart stopped beating. Tears streamed down Reba's face as she read Rex's words from 25 years ago. "My dad was the strongest man I knew. He survived a war, came home, raised a family, and never complained. But I saw the pain in his eyes every day. I wish I'd known how to help him. I wish he'd let me in." The parallel wasn't lost on Reba. Rex was now doing exactly what his father had done, suffering in silence, keeping his pain locked away, not wanting to burden the people he loved. The 25th anniversary of his father's death was next week, on November 15th, just 2 days after the Grand Ole Opry show. Rex had never mentioned this to her, never told her about this significant milestone. "Find what you were looking for?" Reba jumped, nearly spilling her coffee. Rex stood in the doorway, wearing his pajama pants and an old t-shirt, his hair tousled from sleep. His expression was unreadable. "Rex, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have—" "It's okay." He walked into the room and sat down in the chair across from her desk. "I saw you weren't in bed, and I figured you'd be down here playing detective. Can't say I blame you. I haven't exactly been forthcoming." Reba closed her laptop and moved around the desk to sit beside him. "I found an article about your father, about his passing. Rex, why didn't you tell me the anniversary was coming up?" Rex rubbed his face with both hands, suddenly looking every one of his 71 years. "Because talking about it makes it real. Because I thought maybe if I just ignored it, the day would pass, and I'd be fine." Because I'm a damn fool who doesn't know how to process his feelings even after 7 decades of living. You're not a fool. You're human. Reba took his hands in hers. Tell me about him. Tell me about your father. And so Rex did. He talked about William Lynn, a farm boy from Oklahoma who'd been drafted at 19 and sent to Vietnam. He described a father who taught him how to fish, how to throw a baseball, how to be a man. He spoke of the nightmares that plagued William, the way he'd sometimes wake up screaming, convinced he was back in the jungle. He shared memories of his mother, Elizabeth Lynn, who'd stood by her husband through everything until her own death from cancer 10 years ago. The worst part, Rex said, his voice breaking, is that I didn't really understand what he went through until I was older. When I was a kid, and he'd have one of his episodes, I'd get scared or frustrated. I didn't have the maturity to realize he was sick, that he needed help. And by the time I was old enough to understand, he was too far gone. He'd built these walls so high that nobody could reach him. That sounds familiar, Reba said softly. Rex looked at her, and a rueful smile touched his lips. Yeah, I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I've been doing the same thing, haven't I? Building walls, keeping you out. We can tear those walls down together, but you have to let me help. They sat in silence for a moment, holding hands, the early morning light growing stronger through the windows. Outside, birds began their morning songs, and the world slowly came to life. There's something else, Rex said finally. Something I've never told anyone. Not even you. Reba waited, giving him the space to continue at his own pace. The day before my dad died, we had an argument. A stupid, pointless argument about something I can't even remember now. I was busy with my career, flying high with some role I'd just booked, and he called wanting to talk. I brushed him off, said I'd call him back later, but I didn't. And the next day, he was gone. I never got to say goodbye. I never got to tell him I loved him, that I understood, that I forgave him for not being perfect. Oh, Rex. Reba moved to kneel in front of him, taking his face in her hands. Your father knew you loved him. Parents always know. Do they? Because sometimes I wonder if he died thinking I resented him for being broken, for not being the father I needed him to be. Is that what you think? That you resented him? Rex's tears flowed freely now. No. God, no. I loved him so much. I just didn't know how to show it. I didn't know how to bridge the gap between us. Reba pulled him into her arms, and Rex finally allowed himself to break down completely. His body shook with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and ancient, a grief that had been buried for 25 years. She held him through it all, running her fingers through his hair, murmuring words of comfort, letting him release the pain he'd been carrying alone. When the storm finally passed, Rex pulled back and wiped his eyes. I'm sorry. I'm a mess. You're my mess. And I love you exactly as you are. Reba kissed his forehead. And I have an idea, but I need you to trust me. I always trust you. Good. Because I want to do something special at the Grand Ole Opry show. Something for you, for your father, for all the people who've suffered, and the ones who've loved them through it. Rex looked uncertain. Reba, I don't want this to be a pity party. I don't want... It won't be, I promise. Just trust me, okay? He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but only because it's you. Later that morning, after Rex had showered and headed out to run some errands, Jennifer arrived at the house with her planner and a determined expression. Reba had called her as soon as Rex left, asking her to come over immediately. Okay, I'm here. What's the emergency? Jennifer asked, settling onto the living room couch. Reba explained everything she'd learned about Rex's father, the 25th anniversary, and the guilt Rex had been carrying. Jennifer listened intently, her eyes growing misty as the story unfolded. "That poor man," Jennifer said when Reba finished. "No wonder he's been so withdrawn. He's been reliving all of this, probably wondering if he should tell you or handle it alone. That's why I need your help. I want to change the entire Grand Ole Opry set list. I want to create a tribute, not just to my career, but to the people who've supported us, who've loved us, who've fought their own battles, visible and invisible." Jennifer pulled out her planner, already making notes. "That's a beautiful idea, but we only have 6 days. 6 days to rework an entire show that's been planned for months. I know it's asking a lot, but I'm in. Of course I'm in. What do you need?" They spent the next 3 hours brainstorming. Reba wanted to perform songs that spoke to themes of love, loss, healing, and hope. She wanted to share stories between songs. Real, raw stories about her own experiences with grief and how music had saved her. And at the end of the show, she wanted to perform a special song dedicated to Rex and his father, though she hadn't yet decided which one. "What about The Greatest Man I Never Knew?" Jennifer suggested. "That song always makes me cry, and the lyrics are perfect for what you're trying to say." Reba considered it. The song, which she'd recorded in 1992, told the story of a daughter's relationship with her distant father, a man she never truly knew until it was too late. That could work. But I want to add something personal to it. Maybe change some of the lyrics to make it more specific to Rex's experience. "You'd need to contact the songwriters for permission," Jennifer noted. "I'll make some calls. Richard Lee and Lang Martin Jr. are good friends. I think they'll understand what I'm trying to do." As they worked through the details, Robert Caldwell arrived for their scheduled meeting. Robert was a legendary music producer in his late 60s, with a head of thick gray hair and a weathered face that testified to decades spent in smoky studios and late-night recording sessions. He'd worked with Reba off and on throughout her career and was producing this Grand Ole Opry special. "Ladies," he greeted them, his Tennessee accent thick as molasses. "I hear we're making some changes to the show." Reba filled him in on her vision, watching his face carefully for any sign of resistance. Instead, Robert's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "Reba, this is why you're one of the greatest artists of our time. Most people would play it safe for a milestone show like this, trot out the hits, take their bows. But you're always thinking about how to connect, how to make it mean something." He sat down and pulled out his own notes. "Let's make this happen." They worked through lunch and into the afternoon, crafting a show that would take the audience on an emotional journey. In addition to her plan for Rex, Reba decided to invite some special guests, fellow artists who'd dealt with their own struggles and come out the other side. She called Vince Gill, who agreed to join her for a duet. She reached out to Trisha Yearwood, her close friend, who enthusiastically signed on. Even Dolly Parton, despite her busy schedule, agreed to send a video message. "This is shaping up to be something really special," Robert said as they wrapped up their planning session. "But Reba, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to be emotionally exhausting for you, performing such personal material. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Reba thought about Rex, about the pain she'd seen in his eyes, about the walls he'd been trying to tear down. "I'm ready. This isn't just about me. It's about showing Rex that vulnerability isn't weakness, that sharing our pain can actually help us heal. If I'm asking him to be open with me, I need to model that same openness." After Robert and Jennifer left, Reba sat at her piano again, this time with purpose. She began playing The Greatest Man I Never Knew, letting the familiar melody wash over her. She thought about Rex's father, William, a man she'd never met, but felt she now understood. She thought about all the veterans who'd come home from war only to fight new battles in their own minds. She thought about the families who loved them, who stood by them, who sometimes felt helpless in the face of invisible wounds. And as she played, new lyrics began to form. Personal lyrics, true lyrics, lyrics that told Rex's story and honored his father's memory. She sang softly, testing the words. The greatest man I never knew lived just down the hall, and every day we said hello, but never touched at all. He was in his paper, I was in my room. How was I to know he thought I hung the moon? But she added new verses, ones that spoke directly to Rex's experience. I watched you watch your father fade behind those haunted eyes, a hero who came home from war, but couldn't leave behind the battles that he fought each night, the demons he couldn't name. And now you carry his same weight, his silence and his shame. The sun was setting when Rex returned home, carrying bags of groceries. He found Reba still at the piano, surrounded by crumpled papers covered in scratched-out lyrics and musical notations. "You've been busy," he observed, setting the bags down. "I have. Come here. I want to play something for you." Rex walked over, and Reba patted the piano bench beside her. He sat down, his larger frame making the bench feel suddenly small. She began to play, singing the modified version of the song, her voice filled with emotion. By the time she finished, tears were streaming down both their faces. "It's beautiful," Rex whispered. "It's perfect. It's for you, for your dad, for everyone who's ever struggled to say the words they needed to say." Rex wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Thank you. Thank you for seeing me, for seeing him, for caring enough to do this." They sat there in the growing darkness, neither moving to turn on the lights. The house was quiet except for their breathing and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. Outside, the November wind picked up, rattling the windows and reminding them that winter was coming. But inside, in that moment, there was warmth, there was understanding, there was hope that healing was possible, that wounds could close even after 25 years, that love could bridge any gap if both people were willing to reach across. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Reba's home became command central for what everyone was now calling the most important show of her career. Musicians came and went, rehearsing arrangements. Sound technicians tested equipment. Jennifer coordinated logistics with the precision of a military general, while Robert Caldwell fine-tuned every musical detail. Through it all, Rex watched from the sidelines, still processing everything that had happened. Reba had been careful not to push too hard, giving him space while also making sure he knew she was there whenever he needed her. Their conversations had become deeper, more honest. Rex started sharing memories of his father, not just the painful ones, but the good ones too. The time William taught him to drive on empty country roads, the fishing trips where they'd sit in comfortable silence for hours, the way his father's face would light up when Rex told him about landing a new acting role. On Wednesday afternoon, 4 days before the Grand Ole Opry show, Jennifer pulled Reba aside during a break in rehearsals. "I think we should contact some veteran organizations. Maybe invite them to the show. Make this tribute even bigger." Reba's eyes widened. "That's a brilliant idea. Can we pull it together in time?" "Leave it to me. I know a few people at the Tennessee Veterans Affairs office. Let me make some calls." By evening, Jennifer had secured complimentary tickets for 50 veterans and their families. The Grand Ole Opry management, when they heard about Reba's plans, offered to cover the cost and even set aside a special seating section. The local news caught wind of the story, and suddenly, Reba was fielding interview requests from media outlets across the country. "This is getting bigger than I expected." Reba confessed to Rex that night as they lay in bed. "I hope I'm not making a mistake. I don't want to exploit anyone's pain for publicity." "You're not exploiting anything. You're honoring people who deserve to be honored. There's a big difference." Rex turned on his side to face her. "And you're helping me in ways I never imagined. Every day, I feel a little lighter, like I'm finally letting go of this weight I've been carrying. I'm glad. That's all I want. For you to be happy, to be free. I am. Because of you." He leaned in to kiss her, a slow, tender kiss that spoke of gratitude and love and promise. The next morning, Reba received a call that would add another layer of meaning to the show. Richard Lee, one of the songwriters of The Greatest Man I Never Knew, had heard about her plans and wanted to come to Nashville to see the performance in person. "Reba, what you're doing is exactly why we write songs," Richard said over the phone. "We write them hoping they'll touch people, hoping they'll help someone process their feelings. The fact that you're making this song even more personal, adapting it to honor Rex's father, that's beautiful. Of course, you have my blessing." When Reba shared this news with Rex, he seemed genuinely moved. "These people don't even know me or my dad, but they care. That's the power of music, isn't it? It creates these connections between strangers." That's exactly it. Music reminds us that we're not alone, that other people have felt what we're feeling, survived what we're surviving. That afternoon, Reba had a different kind of meeting. Victoria Patterson, a therapist who specialized in grief counseling and PTSD, had reached out through Jennifer, offering her expertise. Victoria, a woman in her mid-50s with kind brown eyes and a calm demeanor, met Reba at a quiet coffee shop in downtown Nashville. "Thank you for meeting with me," Reba said, as they settled into a corner booth. "I want to make sure I'm handling this right, that I'm not doing more harm than good." Victoria stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "From what Jennifer told me, you're doing everything right. You're creating a safe space for Rex to process his grief. You're showing him that it's okay to be vulnerable. And you're honoring his father's memory in a meaningful way. But what if bringing all this up makes things worse? What if dredging up these memories causes more pain? Grief doesn't work that way. The pain is already there, whether we acknowledge it or not. What you're doing is giving Rex permission to feel it, to express it, and ultimately to heal from it. That's a gift." Victoria leaned forward. "Can I share something with you? I lost my husband to suicide 10 years ago. He was a veteran, like Rex's father. And for years, I kept that pain locked inside, thinking that if I didn't talk about it, it would somehow hurt less. But grief doesn't diminish through silence. It festers, it grows. It wasn't until I started sharing my story, until I found a community of people who understood, that I began to heal." Reba felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. But my point is this. What you're creating with this tribute isn't just about one man or one family. It's about giving voice to a collective pain that too many people carry in silence. Veterans, their families, anyone who's lost someone and never got to say goodbye, they'll all see themselves in your performance. And that visibility, that acknowledgement, can be incredibly healing." They talked for another hour, with Victoria offering suggestions on how to create an emotionally safe environment at the show and how to provide resources for anyone who might need additional support. By the time they parted ways, Reba felt more confident in her vision. That evening, she gathered her core team, Jennifer, Robert, and several key musicians, for a full run-through of the show. They'd rented a private rehearsal space to keep the new set list under wraps. Even Rex hadn't heard the entire show yet. Reba wanted to save the full impact for the actual performance. As she sang through each song, Reba could feel the emotional weight of what they were creating. They opened with Fancy, her 1990 hit about overcoming poverty and hardship, a song about resilience. Then moved to Does He Love You, a duet with Trisha Yearwood that explored the complexity of relationships. The middle of the show featured Consider Me Gone, a powerful anthem about moving forward after heartbreak, followed by I'm a Survivor, which needed no explanation. But it was the final section of the show that carried the most weight. Reba had decided to share her own story of loss before performing the tribute to Rex's father. She would talk about the 1991 plane crash, about the 8 band members and friends she lost, about how she'd almost given up music altogether. She would speak honestly about depression, about grief, about the long road to healing. The key, Robert said during a break, is to make this feel intimate, even in a room full of thousands. You need to speak to each person individually. Make them feel like you're having a conversation just with them. Reba nodded, making mental notes. She'd performed hundreds of shows over her career, but none had ever felt as important as this one. On Friday evening, 2 days before the show, Reba and Rex drove out to the ranch they owned, about an hour outside Nashville. They needed time away from the chaos, time to just be together before the whirlwind of the weekend. The ranch was their sanctuary, 200 acres of rolling hills and forests, with a modest cabin that had been in Rex's family for generations. His father had loved this place, and Rex had inherited it after both his parents passed. They'd spent countless weekends here over the years, riding horses, fishing in the pond, or simply sitting on the porch and watching the stars. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, they sat together on that familiar porch, wrapped in a thick blanket against the November chill. The air smelled of pine and earth, and somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. "My dad used to sit right here," Rex said softly. "He'd smoke his pipe and watch the sunset. I never understood why he spent so much time out here by himself, but now I think I get it. This is where he felt peaceful, where the war couldn't reach him. It's beautiful here. I can see why he loved it. I want to spread some of his ashes here. On the anniversary. I never did anything with them after he died. They've been sitting in a box in my closet for 25 years because I couldn't face the finality of it." Reba took his hand. "That's a beautiful idea. We can do it together if you'd like. I'd like that very much." They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Then Rex spoke again, his voice thick with emotion. "You know what kills me? My dad would have loved you. He would have thought you were funny and smart, and way too good for me. And he would have been right. Hey, stop that. You're exactly good enough for me. We're partners, equals. I know. And I'm grateful every single day that you chose me, that you're patient with my baggage and my walls, and my inability to express my feelings like a normal human being." Reba laughed softly. "If it makes you feel better, I'm not exactly an open book either. We're both works in progress, learning how to do this love thing right. I think we're doing pretty well so far." "Me too." They stayed at the ranch overnight, sleeping in the small cabin with its creaky floors and drafty windows. In the morning, they woke to the sound of rain pattering on the tin roof, a soothing rhythm that made them want to stay in bed forever. But Nashville called, and they had a show to finalize. On the drive back, Rex suddenly asked, "Are you nervous? About tomorrow night?" "Terrified," Reba admitted. "This is the most vulnerable I've ever been on stage. I'm scared I'll mess it up, that I won't do justice to the emotions we're trying to convey." "You won't mess it up. You're Reba McEntire. You've been doing this for 50 years. You know exactly how to connect with an audience. But this is different. This is so personal." Rex reached over and squeezed her knee. "That's why it's going to be perfect. Because it's real. Because it comes from the heart. And audiences can always tell the difference between something manufactured and something genuine. Back in Nashville, the final day before the show was a blur of last-minute preparations. Reba did a sound check at the Grand Ole Opry House, the historic venue that had hosted country music's biggest stars since 1925. Standing on that famous stage, looking out at the rows of pews that would soon be filled with people, she felt the weight of history and expectation. Jennifer appeared at her side. Everything's set. The veterans will be seated in the first 10 rows. Media is credentialed and ready. Robert has the band dialed in. All you have to do is go out there and be yourself. No pressure, right? Reba joked, though her stomach was in knots. You've got this. And no matter what happens, you've already accomplished something amazing. You've helped Rex heal, you've created awareness about veteran issues, and you've reminded everyone why you're a legend. That night, Reba couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, running through lyrics in her head, worrying about forgetting words or missing cues. At 2 in the morning, she gave up and went downstairs to her piano. She played through "The Greatest Man I Never Knew" one more time, this time adding a new final verse that had come to her in the sleepless darkness. So now, I'm standing on this stage, with all I couldn't say, to honor him and honor you, and love that lights the way, for all the fathers who came home, but left part of themselves behind, and all the sons who love them still, across the bridge of time. It was perfect. It was complete. It was ready. When Rex found her at dawn, still sitting at the piano, he didn't say anything. He just wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside her, and they watched the sun rise together through the windows, preparing themselves for the day that would change everything. The morning of November 13th, 2025, dawned clear and cold in Nashville. Reba woke before her alarm. Rex's arm draped across her waist, his breathing slow and steady. She lay still for a moment, savoring this quiet peace before the storm of the day ahead. By 7 o'clock, their home had transformed into organized chaos. Hair and makeup artists arrived, setting up their stations in the spacious bathroom. Jennifer appeared with coffee and Reba's meticulously planned schedule for the day. Wardrobe assistants brought in the garment bags containing the 3 outfit changes Reba would make during the show, each one carefully chosen to reflect the emotional arc of the performance. "How are you feeling?" Jennifer asked, handing Reba a cup of coffee exactly how she liked it. 2 creams, 1 sugar. "Like I'm about to jump off a cliff, and I'm not sure if my parachute will open," Reba replied honestly. "Your parachute always opens. You're Reba McEntire." Rex emerged from the bedroom, looking unusually formal in dress slacks and a button-down shirt. He'd insisted on wearing one of his father's old bolo ties, a turquoise and silver piece that William had worn to every special occasion. "You look handsome," Reba said, pulling him in for a kiss. "You haven't even done your hair and makeup yet, and you already look beautiful," he countered. The day moved in distinct phases. Morning was for preparation, hair styled in Reba's signature red waves, makeup applied with precision, vocal warm-ups to ensure her voice was in peak condition. Robert Caldwell called twice to go over last-minute details. Vince Gill's manager confirmed he'd arrive by 3 for rehearsal. The Grand Ole Opry's artistic director wanted to review the running order one more time. Around noon, Reba finally had a moment alone. She stood in her closet, looking at the 3 outfits hanging there. The first was a sparkling red gown for the opening numbers, bold, confident, celebratory. The second was a more subdued navy blue dress for the middle section, elegant but somber. The third was what she'd wear for the tribute, a simple white blouse and black pants, no flash, no pageantry. Just Reba, stripped down to her essence, ready to speak from the heart. "You hiding in your closet?" Rex's voice came from the doorway. "Just taking a moment, trying to center myself." He walked in and wrapped his arms around her from behind, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "I want you to know something. No matter what happens tonight, no matter how the performance goes, you've already given me the greatest gift anyone could give. You've helped me face something I've been running from for 25 years. You've shown me that it's okay to feel, to grieve, to remember. That's bigger than any show, bigger than any song." Reba turned in his arms, pressing her face against his chest. "I love you so much." "I love you too. Now, let's go show Nashville what it means to be brave." They arrived at the Grand Ole Opry House at 2 o'clock, giving Reba plenty of time before the 7 o'clock show. The venue's backstage area bustled with activity, band members tuning instruments, technicians testing microphones, producers reviewing camera angles for the broadcast that would stream live on multiple platforms. Reba's dressing room had been decorated with flowers from well-wishers, roses from Dolly Parton, lilies from Carrie Underwood, wildflowers from Martina McBride. Cards and notes covered every surface, messages of support from friends and colleagues across the music industry. At 3 o'clock, Vince Gill arrived for their duet rehearsal. Tall and gracious, with silver hair and a warm smile, Vince had been a friend for decades. He hugged Reba tightly when he saw her. "I heard what you're doing tonight. It's brave as hell, and I'm honored to be part of it." They rehearsed their duet of Oklahoma Swing, a fun, upbeat number that would provide some levity in the middle of the show. But afterward, Vince pulled Reba aside. "I lost my brother to a heart attack a few years back. Sudden, no warning, and I never got to tell him how much he meant to me, how much I admired him. So what you're doing for Rex, giving him this public platform to honor his father, that's powerful. That's healing not just for him, but for everyone who's ever lost someone and has regrets." Reba felt tears threatening her carefully applied makeup. "Thank you for understanding. I was worried people would think this was too heavy, too personal for a celebration show. The best performances are always personal. That's what makes them resonate." At 5 o'clock, the first audience members began arriving. Reba watched from a side window as the veterans and their families filed in, many wearing jackets adorned with military patches and medals. Some were in wheelchairs. Some walked with canes. All of them carried the invisible weight of service and sacrifice. Jennifer appeared at her shoulder. "They're here for you, for Rex, for William. You're giving them something they've needed. Recognition, acknowledgement, a voice. I hope I don't let them down." "You won't. Now, come on, it's time to get dressed." The first outfit, the red gown, sparkled under the dressing room lights. As Reba's assistant helped her into it, she felt herself transforming from Reba, the person, into Reba, the performer. It was a familiar shift, one she'd made thousands of times over 50 years. But tonight, it felt different. Tonight, the line between person and performer would blur. Tonight, she would be both simultaneously. At 6:30, Robert Caldwell gathered everyone for a final huddle. Band members, backup singers, technicians, producers. "Okay, folks, this is it. This is what we've been working toward. Tonight isn't just about putting on a good show. It's about creating a moment that matters, that helps people heal, that reminds them why music is so important. So let's go out there and make magic." Reba found Rex in the wings, watching the audience fill the historic venue. She took his hand, and he looked down at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you," he whispered, "for all of this, for seeing me, for loving me enough to do this. Always," she whispered back. At precisely 7 o'clock, the lights dimmed. The audience quieted, and somewhere in the control booth, a technician gave the signal. It was time. The opening notes of Fancy rang out, and Reba stepped onto the stage, hit by a wall of sound. Applause, cheers, whistles. The energy was electric, palpable. She grabbed the microphone, and when she opened her mouth to sing, 50 years of experience took over. She was phenomenal. The first section of the show was pure entertainment. All the hits, all the fun, all the personality that had made her a star. She bantered with the audience between songs, sharing funny stories from her career. When Vince Gill joined her for their duet, their chemistry was obvious, their voices blending in perfect harmony. But then came the transition. The lights shifted from bright to atmospheric. The tempo slowed, and Reba began to speak. Y'all have been so wonderful tonight, celebrating 50 years of music with me. But I want to shift gears for a moment, if that's okay. I want to talk about something real, something hard, something that matters. The audience leaned in, sensing the change in energy. In 1991, I lost 8 members of my band in a plane crash. It's something many of you know about, but what you might not know is how close I came to never singing again. The grief was overwhelming. The guilt, why did I survive when they didn't, was crushing. And for a long time, I didn't think I'd ever feel joy again. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. But here's what I learned. Grief doesn't mean we forget. It doesn't mean we stop living. It means we carry our loved ones with us in a different way. We honor them by continuing, by finding meaning, by choosing love, even when it's hard. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Tonight, I want to honor someone special, someone I never met, but who I've come to know through the man I love. She looked off stage to where Rex stood, tears already streaming down his face. My husband's father, William Lynn, was a Vietnam War veteran. He came home from that war, but like so many veterans, he never really left it behind. He battled demons that most of us can't imagine, and he did it quietly, proudly, never wanting to burden his family. She could see veterans in the audience nodding, recognizing their own stories in her words. William passed away 25 years ago this week, and my husband Rex has carried guilt about that loss. Guilt about not understanding sooner, not saying the right things, not having one more conversation. So tonight, Rex, this is for you, and for your dad, and for every veteran in this room, and every family member who's loved them through the battles we can see, and the ones we can't. The opening notes of The Greatest Man I Never Knew began, and Reba sang with every ounce of emotion she possessed. Her voice cracked in places, on purpose, letting the raw feeling through. When she reached the new verses she'd written specifically about Rex and William, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. As the final note faded, Reba spoke one more time. "Rex, come out here." Rex hesitated, but Jennifer gave him a gentle push from the wings. He walked onto the stage, looking overwhelmed. Reba took his hand. "I love you," she said, her microphone picking up the words and carrying them to every corner of the venue. "And I'm so grateful you let me share your story, your father's story. Because these stories need to be told. These sacrifices need to be honored. And love, the kind of love that sees someone's pain and says, 'I'm here, I'm not going anywhere.' That's what heals us." The audience rose as one, applauding not just for the performance, but for the courage it took to be so vulnerable. Rex pulled Reba into his arms, and they stood there, center stage, two people who'd found each other later in life and built something beautiful together. When the show finally ended, after 3 encores and countless standing ovations, Reba's voice was hoarse, and her feet ached in her heels. But her heart was full. She'd done what she set out to do, created a bridge between pain and healing, between silence and voice, between the past and the present. In the dressing room afterward, as she removed her makeup and changed into comfortable clothes, there was a knock at the door. Jennifer opened it to reveal a group of veterans, still in their seats when everyone else had left. "Ms. McEntire," one of them said. A man in his 70s wearing a jacket covered in Vietnam war patches. "We just wanted to say thank you for seeing us, for telling our stories, for reminding people that we're still here, still fighting battles that never really end." Reba walked over and took his hand. "Thank you for your service. And thank you for being here tonight." Another veteran, a woman in her 60s, stepped forward. "My husband was like Rex's father. He came home from the Gulf War and was never the same. He took his own life 5 years ago. Listening to you tonight, I felt like someone finally understood what we went through as a family. So thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you." One by one, they shared their stories, and Reba listened to every single one, giving them the time and attention they deserved. This, she realized, was the real performance, not the singing on stage, but this connection, this witnessing, this acknowledgement of pain and survival. By the time they left the venue, it was after midnight. Rex drove them home in comfortable silence, both too emotionally exhausted for words. But as they pulled into their driveway, Rex finally spoke. "Tomorrow, let's go to the ranch. Let's spread my dad's ashes like I said. And let's start fresh, without all this weight I've been carrying." "That sounds perfect," Reba agreed. Inside their house, they collapsed onto the couch, still in their clothes from the show. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a bone-deep tiredness. But it was the good kind of tired, the kind that comes after accomplishing something meaningful. "Did you see their faces?" Rex asked. "Those veterans, when you were singing? They were really listening, really feeling every word." "I did. And I realized something tonight. Music isn't just entertainment. It's medicine. It's therapy. It's a way for us to process feelings we don't have words for." Rex pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "Your medicine. You're my therapy. You're everything I didn't know I needed." They fell asleep there on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, the weight of 25 years of grief finally beginning to lift. Outside, the November wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the promise of healing and the hope of new beginnings. The morning after the Grand Ole Opry show, Reba woke to find Rex already awake, staring at the ceiling with a peaceful expression she hadn't seen in weeks. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting golden patterns across their bedroom walls. "Good morning," she murmured, stretching. "Good morning, beautiful. How'd you sleep?" "Like a rock. I think I was running on pure adrenaline yesterday, and it all caught up with me." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "How about you?" "Best night's sleep I've had in years, actually. No nightmares, no waking up in cold sweats. I feel lighter." They lay there for a while longer, basking in the quiet morning. No urgency, no schedule to keep, just two people enjoying being together. Eventually, the smell of coffee pulled them downstairs, where Jennifer had already let herself in and started breakfast. "Morning, lovebirds," she greeted them cheerfully. "Figured you'd need some fuel after last night's performance. I made eggs, bacon, and biscuits." "You're a saint," Reba said, accepting a mug of coffee gratefully. Over breakfast, Jennifer pulled out her phone. "Okay, so you need to see this. Social media is going absolutely crazy. Reba Tribute is trending #1 on Twitter. The streaming numbers for last night's broadcast are through the roof. And look at these comments." She scrolled through hundreds of messages from people sharing their own stories of loss, of veterans and their families, of grief they'd been carrying alone. Many thanked Reba for giving voice to their pain. Others shared how the performance had inspired them to reach out to family members they'd been estranged from. Still others talked about finally seeking therapy for traumas they'd been suppressing. "This is incredible," Rex said, reading over Jennifer's shoulder. "It's like you started a whole conversation." "That was the goal," Reba replied, "to remind people that they're not alone." Jennifer set down her phone and looked at them seriously. "The media is requesting interviews. Good Morning America wants you on Monday. The Today Show is asking for an exclusive. Entertainment Weekly wants to do a cover story. How do you want to handle this?" Reba glanced at Rex. "What do you think? This is your story too." Rex considered for a moment. "I think we should do some interviews, but only if we can keep the focus on veterans' issues and mental health resources, not on us personally. This isn't about our relationship or my family drama. It's about something bigger." "Agreed," Reba said. "Jen, can you work with the publicist to set up a few key interviews where we can really dig into these issues? Maybe partner with some veteran organizations to make sure people know where to get help?" "On it. I'll coordinate everything and get back to you with a schedule." Jennifer finished her coffee and gathered her things. "But right now, I'm going to leave you two alone. You deserve some peace after everything you've been through." After Jennifer left, Reba and Rex cleaned up the kitchen together, moving around each other with the easy rhythm of long familiarity. Then they packed a small bag and headed out to the ranch, just as they'd planned. The drive took them through Tennessee countryside, painted in late autumn colors. The sky was a brilliant blue, unmarred by clouds, and the temperature had climbed to a comfortable 60 degrees, unseasonably warm for mid-November. "Perfect day for this," Rex observed as they turned onto the gravel road leading to the ranch. "Your dad's looking out for us," Reba said, only half joking. They spent the afternoon preparing for the ceremony they'd planned. Rex retrieved the simple wooden box containing his father's ashes from where he'd stored it in the cabin's closet. Together, they walked to William's favorite spot, a hilltop overlooking the pond, where wildflowers grew in spring and deer often came to drink. "This is where he wanted to be," Rex said, his voice thick with emotion. "He told me once that this spot made him feel at peace, that here, the war couldn't touch him." Reba stood beside him, her hand in his, as they looked out over the landscape William had loved. Then, "This is perfect." Rex opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a simple plastic bag containing the ashes. He'd also brought a small folding shovel to dig a hole for the portion they would bury, letting the rest scatter on the wind. "I don't know what to say," Rex admitted. "I've been thinking about this moment for days, and now that we're here, all the words have left me." "Then don't say anything. Just feel it. Let yourself be present with him." Rex nodded and began to dig a small hole near the base of an old oak tree. When it was ready, he carefully poured half the ashes into it, then covered them with earth. He patted the soil gently, as if tucking his father into bed. Then he stood, opened the bag again, and held it up to the wind. The ashes caught in the breeze, swirling and dancing in the sunlight before settling across the hillside, mixing with the earth his father had loved. "Dad," Rex said, his voice breaking, "I'm sorry it took me 25 years to do this. I'm sorry for all the things I didn't say, all the times I didn't understand. But I want you to know, I get it now. I understand what you were fighting, what you couldn't put into words, and I forgive you for not being perfect, because God knows I'm not either." Tears streamed down his face, and Reba squeezed his hand tighter. "I met someone, Dad. Someone incredible. Someone who sees me, really sees me, and loves me anyway. Her name is Reba, and she's standing right here with me. She helped me find my way back to you, helped me understand that it's okay to hurt, okay to grieve, okay to need help. I wish you could have met her. I wish you could have learned those lessons too. He paused, collecting himself. I love you, Dad. I always have, even when I didn't know how to show it. Rest easy now. You've earned it. The wind picked up again, rustling through the trees, and for a moment, Reba could have sworn she felt a presence, something warm and comforting, like an embrace. Rex felt it too. She could tell by the way his body relaxed, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. They stood there for a long time, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. Finally, Rex turned to Reba and pulled her into his arms. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for seeing me, for loving me, for giving me the courage to do this. You don't have to thank me. This is what love is. Showing up, being present, walking through the hard stuff together." They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, and that evening, they sat on the porch just as William used to do. They didn't talk much, just enjoyed being together, watching the stars come out one by one. Over the next few weeks, the impact of the Grand Ole Opry show continued to ripple outward. Reba and Rex did several interviews, always steering the conversation toward veteran support and mental health resources. The attention led to a significant increase in donations to organizations that helped veterans and their families. Several members of Congress even referenced the performance when discussing expanded funding for veteran mental health services. But the most meaningful responses came from individuals. Letters poured in from all over the country, veterans sharing their stories, family members expressing gratitude, therapists saying they'd seen an uptick in people finally seeking help for long-buried traumas. One letter in particular stood out, from a woman named Catherine Reynolds in Ohio. She wrote, "People Plus One. Dear Reba and Rex, I watched your performance with my father, a 75-year-old Vietnam veteran who hasn't spoken about the war in 50 years. As you sang, I watched tears stream down his face. After the show ended, he turned to me and said, 'I think I need to talk to someone.' We've started therapy together, both of us, because we both have wounds that need healing. Thank you for opening that door." Reading that letter, sitting in their living room on a cold December morning, both Reba and Rex cried. Not tears of sadness, but of gratitude and hope. "We did something good," Rex said simply. "We did," Reba agreed. As the holiday season approached, they found themselves in a different place emotionally than where they'd started in November. The weight that had pressed down on Rex had lifted. He laughed more easily, slept more soundly, and talked openly about his father with fondness rather than guilt. On Christmas morning, after opening presents and making breakfast together, Rex handed Reba one more gift, a small box wrapped in simple brown paper. "What's this?" she asked. "Open it." Inside was a piece of turquoise and silver jewelry, a necklace that matched the bolo tie Rex had worn to the Grand Ole Opry show. "It was my mother's," Rex explained. "My father gave it to her on their 25th wedding anniversary. I want you to have it now, because you've given me something just as precious: the freedom to feel, to grieve, to heal." Reba put the necklace on immediately, and when she looked in the mirror, she saw not just herself, but the legacy of William and Elizabeth Lynn, and the love story that connected them all across time. "It's beautiful," she said, touching the pendant. "You're beautiful, inside and out." That afternoon, they drove to the cemetery where William and Elizabeth were buried. It was Reba's first time visiting the graves, and she brought flowers, white roses for Elizabeth, red ones for William. "Hi, Mom and Dad," Rex said, standing before the matching headstones. "I brought someone I want you to meet. This is Reba, the love of my life. She's the reason I'm finally at peace. She's the reason I can stand here today without that crushing weight in my chest." He placed his flowers on the graves, and Reba added hers. "Mr. and Mrs. Lynn," Reba said softly, "thank you for raising this incredible man. Thank you for his strength, his kindness, his capacity for love. I promise to take good care of him, to support him, to walk beside him through whatever comes. And I promise to help him honor your memory, not just through grief, but through joy, by living fully, loving deeply, and never taking a single day for granted." As they drove home through the winter landscape, bare trees standing stark against gray skies, Rex reached over and took Reba's hand. "You know what I realized?" he said. "My father spent his whole life trying to protect us from his pain. He thought that by keeping silent, by staying strong, he was being a good husband and father. But what he didn't understand, what I didn't understand until now, is that the greatest gift we can give the people we love isn't perfection or strength. It's honesty, it's vulnerability, it's letting them see us as we really are." "That's beautiful," Reba said, "and so true. I want to spend the rest of my life being honest with you. No more walls, no more hiding. Just us, exactly as we are. I wouldn't have it any other way." As 2025 drew to a close and 2026 began, Reba and Rex settled into a new normal. They continued their work, Reba with The Voice and Happy's Place, Rex with his acting roles, but they also made time for what mattered most: each other, their relationship, and the ongoing conversation about mental health and veteran support that the Grand Ole Opry performance had sparked. In February, they returned to the Grand Ole Opry for another show, this time a benefit concert raising money for veteran organizations. The response was overwhelming, with tickets selling out in minutes and raising over $2 million. Standing backstage before that performance, Reba looked at Rex and smiled. "Ready? With you by my side? Always." They walked out onto that historic stage together, hand in hand, and the audience erupted in applause. But this time, there were no nerves, no fear, no weight of unspoken grief. There was only love, pure, honest, healing love, and the knowledge that by being vulnerable, by sharing their story, they had helped countless others find their own path to healing. As Reba began to sing, her voice strong and clear, she thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The pain, the discovery, the courage it took to face buried trauma. And she realized that this was what her 50 years in music had been building toward. Not fame or awards or accolades, but the ability to use her platform to make a real difference in people's lives. The performance was magical, filled with hope and healing and the promise of new beginnings. And when it was over, as Reba and Rex took their final bow together, they knew that they had found something rare and precious, a love strong enough to carry them through anything, a partnership built on honesty and vulnerability, and a purpose greater than themselves. That night, driving home under a sky full of stars, Rex turned to Reba and said, "I never thought I could be this happy. I never thought I deserved it. You do deserve it. We both do. And we're going to spend the rest of our lives proving it to each other." And they did. Through the ups and downs, the triumphs and challenges, the ordinary moments and extraordinary ones, they walked through life together. Two people who had found each other at exactly the right time, who had learned that true strength comes from vulnerability, and that the greatest performances aren't the ones we give on stage, but the ones we give every day by showing up for the people we love, exactly as we are. The story of Reba's tribute to Rex and his father became legendary in Nashville and beyond, not just as a great performance, but as a reminder of music's power to heal, to connect, and to change lives. And years later, when people asked Reba about her most memorable moment in 50 years of performing, she always pointed to that November night at the Grand Ole Opry when she stood on stage and sang from her heart, not just for an audience, but for the man she loved and the healing they both needed. Because, in the end, that's what music is really about: creating bridges between hearts, giving voice to feelings we can't express, and reminding us that we're never truly alone in our pain or our joy. And that night, standing in that circle of light on country music's most famous stage, Reba McEntire did exactly that, and left everyone, including herself, speechless.